I'm Alex.
And I'm Shane.
And this is the RPM Podcast.
And welcome back to the RPM Podcast, where Alex and I will be diving into all the teams over the next couple of days and talking about how they've done in 2021, compare them to last year, and our thoughts and opinions going forward. Today, it is Alpine. Now, Alpine is a new name for the sport in 2021 after being rebranded from the Renault outfit from 2020. And this is where we'll be drawing most of our comparison from, I should imagine. So, in 2020, under the Renault name, the team scored 181 points and finished 5th place in the Constructors' Championship. Now, Alpine have held on to that 5th place in the Constructors' Championship, however, only scored 155 points. Now, it doesn't seem like too many less, but this season was much longer than the 2020 season. So, obviously, the team have arguably done a little bit worse on points this year, but have stayed the same in 5th place. The drivers are Esteban Ocon with 74 points, with his best finish in Hungary. What an amazing race that was. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And Fernando Alonso with 81 points, and his best finish was 3rd place in Qatar. It's been a pretty good season for Alpine. They've had some highs and they've had some lows, and I find it quite interesting how we've got Fernando Alonso back in this team. And actually, he's only scored 7 points more than Esteban Ocon. I thought there'd be a little bit more of a difference. But on the whole, Alex, what's your thoughts on Alpine in 2021?
I think they can be very happy with what was intended to be a transitional year for the outfit. Even if it wasn't quite a solid overall, like you say, they equaled their 5th place finish. And they didn't land on the podium as many times, it's true, but they did come away with their first race win in a long time. 2008, I think, was Renault's last win. So it was a long time ago now, and they did sort of solidify themselves as a team again, as a potential future front runner, and that's obviously where they want to be again. We obviously saw the return of or much anticipated return of one of the sport's greatest of all time, Fernando Alonso, as well as the departure of Cyril Abiteboul and the sort of new formation of their command structure, which honestly I found pretty hard to understand. They seem to have 3 team principals that are broken up into a racing director, an executive director, and a chief executive officer. And I don't really know what the difference between any of those 3 is supposed to be. And the only one I ever remember is Davide Brivio. But I guess the results will speak for themselves. My main concern with Alpine and their A521 is that it seemed very, very capricious as a car. One moment they'd be lighting up the timesheets on Saturday, like with Ocon's 5th place start in Spain, or putting in great finishes on Sunday, like in Hungary, where they clearly had the pace because Ocon led for most of that race. Like it was 50 plus laps that he led that race. So it wasn't like he was hanging on by the skin of his teeth or sneaked it at the end. The car had the pace, absolutely. Alonso had 5 top 6 finishes. So the car had it. And then on other days, they'd be struggling to get out of Q1. Or they'd be completely lacking any pace on race day. So it just seemed to be a bit all over the place, that Alpine. Some days it had great potential and others not. What they did have going for themselves, though, was excellent camaraderie and consistency between their 2 drivers. Whereas, as soon as Fernando Alonso gets involved, as history has shown, you expect a little bit of friction between the teammates. You expect a potential domination like we saw with Van Dorn when he was at McLaren. That didn't happen at all. They were pretty evenly matched and complemented each other nicely. They both played the team game. It was 11-10 in Alonso's favour in race results and an equal 11 each in qualifying. So, and they scored pretty evenly as well, like you already mentioned, helping each other out when it really mattered, like in Hungary and Qatar. So I think the news for Alpine is really good. And they're a surprising pairing in a way. I think maybe if you'd asked at the start of the season whether or not which driver pairings you think would be the most evenly matched, I don't think many people would have said Alonso and Ocon.
No, I completely agree. And what I find fascinating, you've slightly alluded to it as well, is just the difference in that car at some tracks. Like sometimes they are fantastic. Let's just take Qatar, for example. Like Fernando Alonso put it in P3 in qualifying. And it started the race. We all thought he was going to send it down the inside of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. He didn't make it stick. But actually what he did do was far more impressive. And for half the race, or for the majority of the race, he kept up or was within like 10, 20 seconds of those front runners. And usually we've seen Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton leave the rest of the grid by 2 or 3 seconds a lap this year. But Fernando Alonso in clean air was only dropping, less than a second per lap to the cars, which are so much more superior. And I thought, actually, this is a glimpse into what Alpine could be. That car looks like it does run quite well in clean air. It always seems to get bogged down in the middle field. It always seems to end up in a little bit of trouble, little bits of oversteer and not many spins, but just doesn't seem to make much progression in the middle of the field. But put it out in some clean air, and it just seems to go. So that's clearly how the car works. But I thought it was really fascinating. I love that pairing. Like you said, if you had said at the start of the year, who would have the widest points get difference, and I thought, wow, it probably wouldn't be, Alonso and Ocon, but I didn't think they would be that far behind because it's Fernando Alonso. And personally, I know you've always rated Esteban Ocon quite highly, but I didn't. So I did think there would be a far more bigger gap. But actually, what this year's shown is I need to let off Ocon a little bit more and give him the credit he deserves, because he's kept up with Fernando Alonso. He's only 7 points behind him over the course of a whole year. And looking at Fernando's previous teammates over the last 10 years, there's a much bigger difference. There's a much bigger difference. And the teamwork this team have provided or shown us is something we haven't quite seen with many teams really throughout the year, and especially one with Fernando Alonso in.
Well, let's talk a bit about Ocon then and look at his season. Obviously, his 74 points. He finally got his first win. I think he can hold his head high after a very solid season. Obviously, his first win that he achieved with real composure. He had Sebastian Vettel chasing him for a very long time, and he didn't seem to really struggle maintaining that position. And he had a solid team game where it really mattered as well, which is something that he's kind of struggled with a bit in the past. When he was with Ricciardo, there was a little bit more of a gap between them. And then when he was at Force India, there was a little bit of tension between him and Perez. There wasn't really a sense of a team game going on between the two of them. So it was a lot more positive in that regard for him as well. He certainly kicked off the season a lot better than Fernando did, with a run of points finishes from Imola to Monte Carlo. He had a bit of a rough patch after Baku, though. He really struggled for pace at his home race, for example, and in the double dip that we had in Austria. But then he had 10 top 10 finishes from the British Grand Prix onwards. So I've said before that I think that his strengths lie in solid tyre management and long run pace. That's where he really seems to excel. But he could definitely stand to do a bit better on Saturdays. He was lacking in Q3 appearances compared to Alonso, and failed to get out of Q1 on 3 separate occasions. So I think that that's the one area where he could stand to give himself a better starting position going into the race, because once he gets going, he's very good at maintaining, at the very least, maintaining his position. He's not a driver, when I think about his performances, he's not a driver who tends to lose positions at the start or have periods of poor pace in the race. He either gets stuck in a place where it feels like the car can't do much more, but at least he maintains his position, I guess. Or he's able to, like you say, get into some clear air and take advantage of the way that car appears to work. He does have a contract with the team until the end of 2024, I think. So he's really committed himself to that team. So he and the team are quite committed to one another. But I think that overall it's a good result for Ocon. I obviously rate him as a driver. I think he is a bit underrated, and I also just think that he has an interesting background as well. He has a bit more of a modest background compared to a lot of the other drivers. But also, he probably needs to start beating his teammates a bit more. It could be argued that Lando Alonso, whilst one of the greats, is also 40 years old, and if Ocon wants to present himself as a potential future champion, it's time for him to start really pushing ahead of his teammates and even leading that Alpine team to some extent, especially a Frenchman at a French team. So I think coming into the new season, I'd like to see him be a little bit more pronounced as a driver.
I think Ocon had a great end to the season. Looking at his results at the start of the season, it was like 2, 6 points, 2 points, 2 points. And then he went through that run, that first 4 races where he scored nothing. Had that fantastic result in Hungary where he scored 25 points. But the last 4 races, he scored 28 points, which, taking out his race win this year, is more than what he managed to achieve in all the other races apart from Hungary. So he really ended the season on a high, because that's where the majority of the points have come from and the race win, which I thought was really interesting. Whether he just relaxed a little bit or finally got to grips with that car or managed to put that car in clear air and had some great results, because he finished P8 in Brazil, P5 in Qatar, P4 in Saudi Arabia, and then P9 in Abu Dhabi. But those are some of the better results of the year and picking up the more of the points.
Let's take a look at Alonso then. Obviously, he returned to Formula One once again. It's hard not to be impressed by Fernando's perennial quality, even at the age of 40 years old. A lot of people, including myself, raised a few eyebrows at his return, wondering if he'd really be able to compete at the level he clearly wished to after all these years. But he was absolutely on it, despite a few false starts early on in the season. He obviously spent a bit of time trying to get used to the car in race trim, etc. But he had his iconic defence against Hamilton in Hungary, his podium in Qatar. He's running third in Sochi at one point and was doing quite well there. I think he maybe got caught out, was one of the people that got caught out by the rain. But he'd scored plenty of points to show that there's more than enough racing spirit left in him. So it was an excellent season for Alonso, and he made his mark. He wasn't just another runner who is, it's Fernando Alonso, he's great, but he's also, less notable because he's not in potential race-winning machinery or anything. No, he still made his mark on the season, even in a midfield outfit. And I think that, obviously there's the apparent up and down nature of the car that we've touched on. There were a few questionable results, like in Spain and Turkey, where he finished 17th and 16th, respectively. So obviously maybe struggling with something to do with the car there. But I think with more overall consistency, we'll definitely see him on the podium and maybe even on the top step a few more times. Yeah,
that is a bold prediction.
In general, well, I already made it for this season. I backed the wrong Alpine, didn't I? But yeah, in general, it's just hard not to be impressed at how strong he continues to be on both Saturdays and Sundays overall.
Yeah, it's incredible what this guy's managed to achieve in a car which is 5th place in the Constructors' Championship. And we've spoken about how, I don't want to call Fernando Alonso a rookie at all, but obviously he's come back into Formula One. But we've got rookies this year which have just needed to, they're not going to win races, they're not going to finish on the podium, but they really need to make their mark. And Fernando Alonso, I know he's an experienced driver, but he's only been on the podium once. He's not won any races, but he's definitely made his mark. He backed up Lewis Hamilton for a number of laps in Hungary. His defensive driving is incredible. People really struggle to get past him. His consistency is second to none. And he's only DNF twice this season, which is a pretty remarkable achievement. Very consistent with the points, picking them up on the majority of races, apart from that, the early stages of the season, like you already mentioned. But that was around the same time Ocon had his blip as well. I don't know if that was more like car development or whatever's happened, like wrong setup. Maybe they went down the wrong avenue, but those two drivers seemed to struggle at the same time over the course of like 5 or 6 races. But then they both, and especially Alonso, both really picked it up and started to bring in the points.
So what do we think about next season then? There's a lot of money and resources going into this project. Renault Group has really put a lot into it, haven't they?
I'm excited. This is one of the teams which I feel really confident and not passionate about. This is the team I feel like are going to make the biggest improvement going into 2022 because they've got that money, they've got the resources, they've got Fernando Alonso and they've got Esteban Ocon, who is matching his teammate on the majority. Like you said, it's 50, did you say 50-50 in races? And
yeah, I think it's 11-10 in Alonso's favour in race results and equal on qualifying.
That if you can match Fernando Alonso in racing and in qualifying, then you're doing a good job. And this is probably doing Ocon's career the world of good, that he is matching this world champion. And actually, with that combined skill set and having 2 teammates who are equally as good as each other in that car, I really look forward to seeing what can happen if they can just make it a little bit more drivable. Maybe with the new aero regulations going forward, it'll be faster. They'll be fighting maybe the Ferraris, the McLarens. It would be great to see. And they've got 2 drivers who are pretty consistent with one another. And it's exciting. It's really exciting.
Yeah, the only thing that will make it difficult for them is that the midfield is super competitive at the moment. And I think that the Renault bosses are going to want to see their team at least at the top of that midfield pile in order to justify the massive investment. But the general trend suggests that they might be up for it, like you say. And the teamwork, the quality of their drivers, it puts them in a position to really start battling your Ferraris and your McLarens next year, which was just out of their reach across the course of the season. But next year, yeah, it feels like they've got everything that they could need in a material sense. Now it's just time to put in the performances, make sure they got strong strategy and really bring it on the Sunday. So they're an exciting prospect for sure. And with Alonso there, the heady days of the mid to late 2000s, they could well return in one form or another.
I think next year they've got to start off on the right foot, and that means with a very successful, non-glitchy, non-laggy launch video, because that was awful. That was awful this year. And I don't know why I brought this up, but it was just
Didn't
terrible.
really set the tone, did it?
It did not set the tone at all. But if they can nail that, the world is their oyster, because that was just
checking you're ready to go live
already, or whatever it was. It was so bad. But yeah, that was what a great season from Alpine, like a real solid season, and I look forward to see what they can achieve in 2022.
All right, that was Alpine's 2021 season in review. Do send us your thoughts or questions about Alpine or any of the teams across this season. You can get in touch with us at RacePerMinute on Twitter. RacePerMinute.com is our website. All the details are on there, along with all our links to videos and previous podcasts and the like. You can also comment below if you're on YouTube, and we do try and get back to as many as we can. And if you enjoyed this episode, then do give us a like or a 5-star rating, or wherever it is that you're listening to us. Just give us a little bit of feedback. It all helps. Even just any kind of constructive feedback is welcome. We do like to hear what people think. It just helps us with the show and lets us know that people are listening. And if you really like what we do, then don't forget to subscribe, so keep getting all the episodes into your inbox. And if you really want to support the show, the best way to do that is to go to patreon.com/RacePerMinute, where for as little as £1 a month, you can help us keep the content coming and earn yourself some lovely rewards. Right, Shane, we're moving into the bigger teams now. We're getting into the big results. We've just done Alpine, so next it's going to be McLaren, and we're going to be talking about their season. And I'm looking forward to delving into obviously the team I support. I'm looking forward to talking about. I've probably made more notes on them than all of the other teams. Although there's quite a few.
I'm looking forward to
Red Bull and Mercedes, but yeah. So I hope you're looking forward to that too, and we'll see you then.
See you then.